Most people fishing streamers are making the same 5 mistakes. I've spent the last 10 years guiding and fishing some of the best trout waters in the world, from Colorado to Patagonia, Alaska, and Montana. And these 5 mistakes kept coming up time and time again. So here they are and how to fix them. The first mistake that I see in streamer fishing is people not covering nearly enough ground, not understanding how much ground you really should be covering. Streamer fishing is a game of odds, and you want to give yourself the best odds. You're looking for the fish that's aggressive, that's in the right mood, that's going to react to your fly, and they're not in every spot. In fact, the first cast into each spot has the highest odds of getting eaten, because that fish is either going to react to it and eat it, or they're going to ignore it. And each cast after that in the same spot has a lower and lower odds of getting eaten. That means I'm taking 1 to 2 casts in each spot and then I'm moving on, okay? You're gonna be covering miles throughout the day. If you're not fishing fast enough, you're not moving enough. And in order to improve your odds, you gotta be getting as many first chance casts into new spots as possible throughout the day. That means 1 to 2 casts, then you're moving on. If the fish didn't eat it, you're going to the next spot. So you wanna be covering ground. You wanna be moving constantly. If you can cover more ground, statistically, you will catch more fish. It's not like nymph fishing where you can just sit on one run and keep throwing drifts and cover it and continue to catch fish. There may only be 1 fish, 2 fish in that whole run that wants to eat your streamer, that's in the right mood. This is why floating and fishing streamers can be so effective, because you can easily cover 10 to 20 miles in a day. But you want to keep this same mindset if you're wading, where you're constantly moving, constantly searching for the next fish. You're not getting hung up on one spot, trying to fish it really thoroughly. You're getting 1 to 2 casts, each good looking spot, and then you're moving on. If you do this throughout the day, your odds go up significantly. You're gonna catch way more fish on the streamer. The second mistake I see all the time is people not minimizing the slack between their rod tip and their fly. You wanna have as little slack in your fly line between your rod tip and your fly as possible. Streamer fishing is all about feel. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes you get to see the fish eat it, which is awesome, but a lot of the times you're not gonna see it, you're just gonna feel it. And so any slack is gonna delay the time between when the fish eats and when you actually feel the strike. And there's a couple ways to minimize this. The main one is to keep your rod tip directly on the water. If you raise your rod tip up, that line starts bowing, and that's slack in between you and your fly that delays the time it takes for you to feel the strike. And a lot of times, the fish will spit the fly before you ever feel it. Another thing I've seen people do a lot is they keep their rod to the side as they're stripping in the flies, instead of pointing it directly at their fly line. The reason this is a problem is because the flex of your rod is gonna absorb some of the energy when that fish strikes, and it's gonna delay the time it takes before you feel the strike. It's way better to keep your rod pointed directly at the fly line, and you need to keep moving your rod throughout the drift so it always points directly at the fly line. Now obviously there's nuance to this in streamer fishing. There is times where you want to raise your rod a little bit, especially if you have a fast current in front of you and you're trying to slow your flies down a little bit. You don't want that fast current ripping your fly line down. There's other techniques I'll get into in other videos where you use mends to change the direction of your fly throughout the retrieve. But the main concept I want you to understand is that you want to minimize the slack between your rod tip and your fly. If you can do this, and this is one of the main things you focus on, you will feel way more strikes and hook way more fish than if you don't think about this concept. Before we continue, if the first 2 points helped you out, hit subscribe. I'm posting weekly videos about what the last 10 years of guiding taught me. All right, here's the next one. Now the third mistake that I see all the time is people not fishing their streamer downstream. Now this isn't the only way to fish a streamer, but it's one to add to your arsenal, and it can be really effective. A lot of people will just show up to a river, they'll show up to one run, and they'll cast straight across and they'll strip their fly back. And although this can work sometimes, it's not the most effective method. One thing you need to add to your arsenal is casting straight upstream into slow water on the bank or pockets behind rocks and stripping that fly back downstream. The reason this works is because bait fish, especially injured ones, they're going to be fleeing downstream. They don't swim straight upstream. They don't swim across the current a lot of times. They come straight down. And it's really good for getting those reactionary bites, because that brown or that rainbow, whatever you're after, they have to make a quick decision on that fly. Not only does it look more natural to them, but they also, that fly is coming straight down at them. They don't get a good look at it. They got to either decide to eat it or they're not going to eat it. Throw this in your streamer arsenal and you will have some amazing days when it is on. Now, the fourth mistake is people not matching their retrieve length to the type of water that they're fishing. And I don't mean how much line you're stripping or the pace that you're stripping at. I mean whether you take a cast and you strip twice and then you recast, or whether you cast and you strip all the way back to the boat or your feet. And it's very situational dependent. Most people do one or the other. They take a cast, they strip twice, they recast. Or they cast, they strip all the way back to themselves, they do it again. And they don't do it based on the water that they're in. Now let me explain this a little deeper. So take the scenario where you have a fast bank, but you have soft pockets along the bank. That's where the fish are going to be. They're going to be in that soft pocket waiting for bait fish to get washed down in that fast water. And they're going to dip out and they're going to grab it. Now what you want to do is you want to cast, hit that soft water, strip once or twice, and then you're recasting once you get out into that fast water. You're not stripping it all the way back to the boat or your feet. You want to spend as much time in that slower pocket water where the fish are as possible. And you want to cover that whole thing. If you're casting into it and then you're stripping all the way back to the boat or your feet, you're wasting time and you're missing fish. Now take the other situation where you have a nice long run, very consistent water all the way across. The fish could be anywhere throughout that run. That's a situation where you want to cast across and strip it all the way back to you. You want to cover that whole thing. Read the water first and match your retrieve to it. The mistake is doing one or the other every time. You want to spend as much time in the productive water as possible. So on a fast bank, when you're hitting those soft pockets, that means casting, 2 strips, recast. As the boat moves by, you want to hit the next pocket and you're covering that, you're staying in that water. Then if you get to that nice long run, then you can cast across and you can strip it all the way back to the boat. Now the fifth mistake I see is people not matching their fly to their fly line. Now there's a couple really effective ways to do this. One technique I really like to do is to fish a floating line with a long leader to a heavy weighted streamer. This gives the streamer a really good jig action every time you strip the fly, which can be really effective. It also allows you to control the depth of the fly really well by how fast you're stripping. So the faster you strip, the higher up in the water column the fly will be. The slower you move it, the deeper down it will sink, and it has that nice jigging action as you're stripping it. Another way you can rig up is a sinking line with either an unweighted fly or a fly that matches the sink rate of that sinking line. That way, every time you strip, that fly moves, and then you can give it a nice pause in between the strips. That pause can be absolutely deadly. Fish will often eat on the pause, not the strip. It's a really effective technique, but you gotta match the right fly to the fly line in order to achieve it. So you wanna pair the fly to the line that you're fishing, and it can be very situational. So if you're fishing a small creek or fast river where you need to get down quick, it's got a lot of pocket water, that's a great time to fish a floating line with a heavy streamer. If you're fishing a bigger river where you have nice long runs with even current, it's a great time to fish a sinking line with a fly that's matched to that sinking line. That way you can get nice long retrieves all the way across, give it nice good pauses in between each retrieve, and that can be really effective. So here's how you're gonna catch way more fish on streamers. Cover more ground. You wanna be chasing first casts into new zones. Minimize the slack between your fly and your rod tip. based on the water conditions. Sometimes you want to keep your rod tip down nice and low. Sometimes you might need to raise it a little bit. And keep your rod pointed directly at your fly line, not out to the side. Don't just cast straight across the river. Mix in some more downstream presentations, casting straight upstream, stripping the fly back downstream, hitting those pockets, hitting that bank water. You're gonna catch way more fish that way. Match your retrieve length to the water. Pound the pockets, work the tail outs a little more thorough. And match your fly line to your fly. Floating line for the jig action, sinking line for the pause. Do those 5 things and you're gonna catch way more and bigger fish wherever you're fishing streamers.